deserve the position of presidential icon that he holds, not only in America but globally? Or where does he rank with the other presidents?
Yeah, a good question. He established the presidency for that time as a center of action, of optimism, of hope, of seeing problems and going after problems. Had a pretty good legislative record, as a matter of fact. It kind of gets lost in the shuffle. The Civil Rights Bill, which was finally passed under Johnson, signed by Johnson, but was his bill, and it was done. I mean, all the key people in the Congress, I talked to Larry O'Brien, his congressional person, it was done by the time he died. Now, as a matter of fact, there's a kind of funny telephone conversation, tapes of a conversation that Johnson has with a Southern newspaper editor friend of his, talking about civil rights, and Johnson is saying, hey, don't blame me for that. That was all done by the time I got here. That was a Kennedy thing, not my thing. Johnson, of course, himself did an enormous amount for civil rights and civil liberties, but he didn't take any credit for that. So, and he got so many things started. The Consumer Council, first government attention to consumer concerns, the Commission on the Status of Women. The Missile Crisis, of course, was a towering moment of his presidency, the establishment of the Peace Corps. So much happened in that 1,000 days. It's amazing how much happened. But more than that, I think it was his spirit of optimism and commitment and confidence. Arthur Schlesinger said he loved life and he loved his life. Somebody asked him in a press conference, are you enjoying yourself, and would you recommend the job to others? And he said, well, the answer to the first part is yes, and the answer to the second part is no, not yet. He was funny. He was the same person off camera as he was on, or virtually the same. He was a genuine person. One thing that I thought, and I've thought about this a lot since, I mentioned it at Queens, characteristic of people who are successful in getting things done, perhaps. He was very friendly, very approachable, no airs, easy person. But the best way I've ever been able to figure out to explain it is to say he was always your friend but never your pal. There was always just a line of separation. After Robert Dallek, I think, a great book called An Unfinished Life, the best biography I've read. I don't think Dallek knew Kennedy, but he was a professional biographer and did a good, fair, balanced job. It's not a puff piece, and it's not a rip and tear piece either. When that book came out, which detailed a lot of the ailments from which he'd suffered since he was a kid. He was very athletic. He was a great golfer, people tell me. But he was sick a lot. And he had stomach problems and digestive system. And I talked to one of my colleagues in the White House, a fellow named Ralph Dungan, who'd been with him in the Senate years and was in and out of the Oval Office all the time, which I wasn't, and knew him very well, involved with him. And I said, Ralph, did you have any idea how ill he was? And Ralph said, Mr. Compartmentalization. He said, no. He never, ever mentioned it to me. And it's funny because you'd think in the normal course of events, somebody you see all the time, you say, oh, boy, do I feel lousy today. I had an awful night. It was up all night, blah, blah, blah. Now, what is it we were going to talk about? But that was his business.
Given the focus that has been on Obama and the focus that has been back on in America, and you almost feel as if it's back to the future almost, with there's so many similarities that have been drawn between this president and the president you served back in the early 60s. Do you see those, and are they fair?
Yes, I do. I was an Obama supporter going way back to June of '07, and the reason was because I felt and still feel that the worst crime, sin even, in a public sense, of Bush and Cheney was to pretend that Commander-in-Chief, as written in the Constitution, means Commander-in-Chief of the United States. What it means is Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, very different definition. And that of the candidates running, that Obama was the least sort of personally power-hungry kind of guy, and the most aware of the spirit of the Constitution as well as the letter of the Constitution, and he would roll back some of these overreaching approaches of his predecessor, and I didn't see that the others, particularly Mrs. Clinton, were cast in the same mold. But the more I saw of him, and the more I have seen of him, that cool nature, and you know where that comes from. That comes from knowing who you are. Obama wanted the job because of what he could do, not what it would do for him, you know, which is not true of an awful lot of people in public life.